This is Audible.
Simon & Schuster Audio presents The End of the World as We Know It. New Tales of Stephen King's The Stand. Edited by Christopher Golden and Brian Keene. Read by Adenrele Ojo and Sean Patrick Hopkins.
Forward. Christopher Golden. I suspect I was 12, just about to turn 13, when I spotted the first Signet paperback edition of The Stand in an airport bookshop. My family was on the way to Florida to visit my grandparents, back in the days when people still smoked on airplanes. That would have been 1980. I don't recall anything else about the trip, but I remember everything about the literary trip that Franny and Harold took, and Stu Redmond's Odyssey, and the loneliness of Nick Andros. I remember that the fourth time I read the novel, I cried at the end, when I realized the folks in Boulder had named a massive rock in memory of the stalwart Ralph Brentner. I remember beginning to understand redemption at that tender age thanks to Larry Underwood, and so much more. People always talk about their favorite films and their favorite books, and many people change what gets the top spot on their list over the years. The Stand has been my favorite novel for 44 years as of this writing. It carved paths in my imagination that no amount of time's erosion can ever wear away. I've often said that Stephen King was the narrative voice of my youth, that when I think back on my childhood, the tone of those memories is colored by his storytelling style. That's certainly true, and so many of his stories and novels have stayed with me all my life and are part of my personal story. But The Stand is my desert island book. Readers don't simply turn the pages. We inhabit the story. And I knew if I felt that way, a lot of other writers must as well. I was contemplating my visceral connection to the novel one day, and I had one of those wouldn't it be cool if moments. Author Brian Keene and I had recently put together an anthology of stories set in the world of Joe R. Lansdale's shocking milestone horror novel, The Drive-In, and I'd insisted it would be the last anthology I would edit. I'd said the same thing about the one I edited before that, so Brian didn't believe me anyway. We started our careers in different corners of the horror world, but over the years, Brian and I have become brothers. We were born the same year, so most of the films, comics, television series, and most important, fiction that forged our imaginations hit us at the same time. We've played the role of sounding board in each other's lives for some years now, not to mention the role of SWAT officer talking the guy off the ledge. So trust me when I say, I knew The Stand meant just as much to Brian as it does to me. I called him, told him the idea, said I figured Stephen King would never go for it, but that it never hurts to ask. Brian was of the same opinion, so I sent that email. When Stephen gave us the thumbs up, I stared at the response for a minute. Surprise and elation were the obvious reactions, and yeah, I had a massive grin on my face as names of authors instantly started popping into my head. But I was also terrified. What if we fucked it up? What if we went through this whole process and the narrative voice of my youth was disappointed in us? Holy shit. The only way to combat that fear was to stack the deck in our favor by recruiting a roster of contributors we knew shared our love for The Stand and deep respect for its author. I'm not going to name-check the 36 authors in this volume, but I will say that they delivered everything we'd hoped for. Stories from around the world and beyond it. Tales that expanded our understanding of the few weeks surrounding the devastating spread of the Captain Tripp superflu, examined the influence of Mother Abagail and Randall Flagg, and postulated about the landscape that remained after readers turned the final page of Stephen King's masterpiece. Brian will have his own words to share when you've reached the end of this book, but I know I speak for us both when I say we are profoundly honored to have been able to bring this collection to our fellow constant readers. We're forever grateful to Stephen King for his blessing this project and for his support. If listeners feel themselves immersed in the world of The Stand once again, inhabiting that harrowing world the way my imagination still does, then we will consider our mission accomplished. Introduction. Stephen King. Although the unabridged version of The Stand concludes with Randall Flagg, an epilogue meant to show that life is a wheel and evil always comes around again, the original published version ends, as it began, with Stu Redman and Franny Goldsmith. "Franny," he said, and turned her around so he could look into her eyes. "What, Stuart? Do you think people ever learn anything?" She opened her mouth to speak, hesitated, fell silent. The kerosene lamp flickered. Her eyes seemed very blue. "I don't know," she said at last. She seemed unpleased with her answer. She struggled to say something more, to illuminate her first response, and could only say it again. "I don't know." It wasn't Franny who was unpleased. It was me. It wasn't Franny who struggled to say something more. It was me. I remember very clearly coming to the final pages of The Stand and knowing I would have to say goodbye to my friends. There's an epilogue, true, but I never consider Randall Flagg a friend. Of course I remember it. I lived with Stu, Franny, Nick, Tom, Kojak, Lloyd, Abigail, and all the others for over 2 years, and that only covers the first draft, which consisted of 900 single-spaced pages and 500,000 words, give or take a few. I was in Bridgeton, Maine when I finished it. I had an office below the main house, opposite the furnace room. I got very used to that soft rumble, with a ground-level view along the back lawn running down to Long Lake. I typed Fran saying, "I don't know." I struggled to say something that would sum up all that had come before and found only empty platitudes. In the end, and at the end, I simply had Fran repeat it as a thought to herself. "I don't know." Because I didn't know. That became the truest summation I could manage. I have never been satisfied with that ending. It struck me then as limp dick. It did when I revised the original Doubleday version of The Stand and added in all that had been left out, including my favorite psycho, the kid. "Don't tell me, I'll motherfucking tell you." After all that work revising and replacing, mostly in 1986 and 1987, I found myself brought up short by Franny's "I don't know," and as unsatisfied as ever. But because I still couldn't think of anything better, I, pardon the pun, let it stand. I did know some of what was supposed to happen to Stu and Franny on their way back to the East Coast. I knew that Franny was going to fall down a well and encounter the walking dude one more time, call it the last temptation of Franny Goldsmith. I knew that whole story with great clarity, but it had no place in the final, at least so far, version of The Stand. For one thing, I wanted to finish with my main characters in Boulder. For another, the book was already long enough, and I could imagine the critical reaction to what would be seen as authorial self-indulgence if I lingered even longer. I remembered a particularly vicious review of a lengthy James Michener novel. The critics said, more or less, "I have 2 pieces of advice about this book. The first is, don't read it. The second is, if you do, don't drop it on your foot." So that Franny story, appendage, byblow, encore, call it what you want, went unwritten. Then Josh Boone, a talented young director, made a deal to remake The Stand as a CBS All-Access streaming limited series. The original done for ABC, then called a miniseries, was entirely directed by Mick Garris and scripted by me. I had talked about the well story at some point, probably on a panel or some promotional tour. Josh knew about it and asked me to write Franny and the Well as a kind of coda to the CBS series, which I was happy to do. Between Franny and the Well and Flagg's final appearance, I even got a chance to address, if tangentially, that troubling "I don't know." A few years after that, Chris Golden and Brian Keene suggested, I think maybe without too much hope, that I might agree to them editing a collection of stories based on the Stand's basic scenario, that a worldwide plague is released and 99.8% of the world's population is wiped out. My first impulse was to tell them no, because it reminded me of how the music world has an unfortunate habit of producing tribute albums for elderly artists or those who have passed on to that great bebop choir in the sky. Ella Fitzgerald sings Duke Ellington, Dinah Washington sings Bessie Smith, Nielsen sings Randy Newman, and the world-famous various artists sing everything from the Carpenters to Jimi Hendrix to Warren Zevon. So my original feeling was negative. I thought, I'm not old, not dead, and not doddering. Then I had a hip replacement operation as a result of a long-ago accident and woke up in a hospital bed feeling old. When I finally got out of that bed, first on a walker, then on a crutch, I discovered I was also doddering, although only on days ending in Y. At present, I can walk sans crutch for the most part, but post-op, I saw this book proposal in a different light. Part of that was recalling Franny in the Well. Every now and then, I'd wonder how many other stories there might be in a world either suffering the superflu or in its aftermath. I'll freely admit that these thoughts came more frequently at the height of the COVID pandemic, when all at once you couldn't get half and half and people were wiping their asses with ads addressed to occupant because toilet paper had pretty much disappeared from the shelves. I also wondered what was happening in other parts of the world, and even what was happening in the animal kingdom. I should add that one of the stories in this collection, Katrina Ward's The African Painted Dog, answers that question admirably. There was another element, rather vital. I admired the proposed editors of The End of the World as we know it. Messrs. Golden and Keene are fine writers, and as such I trusted them to put together a fine and eclectic collection, which they have in fact done. My only disappointment is that, perhaps out of misplaced modesty, they have elected not to include their own stories. That said, what a bounty is here. I got my wish concerning stories in other parts of the world. In addition to Katrina Ward's story, there are tales set in England, Puerto Rico, Canada, and Pakistan. Even one harrowing visit, courtesy of Tim Leben, to a spacecraft in a decaying orbit. There are 34 stories in this book, by some of the finest authors in the field of horror, fantasy, and science fiction. Others, such as Caroline Kepnes, S.A. Cosby, and Meg Gardner, ordinarily write in other fields, giving their appearances here a special kind of freshness. In the end, every single one of these writers brought their A-game, and the result makes me extremely happy. I'm glad I gave this very special book the green light. It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. Part 1. Down with the Sickness. Room 24. Caroline Kepnes. Just one more stop and he could call it a day. Abel rang the bell. Coming! He knew what he was dealing with. Another accommodating housewife who doesn't want to leave anyone hanging. 2 seconds, she yelled. Bit of a situation with the cake. No problem, ma'am. They were all the same. The women who won't press charges, the dutiful, misguided ones who won't leave their dirtbag husbands. She opened the door. Can I help you? She wasn't lying about the cake. He could smell it on her, in the kitchen. Chocolate. Sorry, he said. Are you Mrs. Blanchard? Yes, she said. He lost his voice. But that's not fair. She stole it. Women could do that. Kill you by pulling at their reddish hair, wiping their hands on a peach sundress, smiling like something out of a horror movie. Glossy, lying eyes, so beautiful it hurt. Freckles on forearms, bruises too. Abel remembered the cover of that book his mother kept on her nightstand, The Bridges of Madison County. He never read it. Sorry, he said again, the way women often do. We got a call about a disturbance. She blinked. He eyeballed the baby in the high chair in the kitchen. Babies made him stiff. Gurgling, pooping reminders of what men do to women, jam their peckers in and squirt. This lovely, sad woman lacked mystery now. To look at that baby was to know that she'd spread her legs. She ran her hands over her forearms. "Ah," she said. "Rona, Rona, Rona." "Excuse me?" "My neighbor, Rona. This isn't... You should see the other guy, if you catch my drift." She left space for him to laugh, as if he didn't know his way around crummy men and the women who think they deserve them. He stayed solid, hard. "Are you alone, ma'am?" She was melting a bit, shaking her head, mumbling that her husband was at work. She pulled her hair over one shoulder, a statue made of stone, impenetrable. "I am in here baking a cake for that woman, which is something I do from time to time as a good neighbor, and she's over there calling the cops. That's a lot, even for her." She said she heard you screaming. Mrs. Blanchard bit her lip. "Can you come in?" Abel followed her into the house. "See," she said, "Rona's alone, never married, and as you can see, I've got my hands full. I'm making her a cake." He took in the mess. Dirty dishes, milk on the floor. "You mentioned that." She was peering at him now, and he liked it. Hated himself for the way he never did learn how to hide it. "Look," she said. "Can I be direct?" "Of course." "Rona's a loner, and this is what she does with her time. She gets in other people's business because she doesn't have any business of her own." On the main road, an ambulance was speeding by, sirens and all. "Can you believe this nonsense?" she huffed, as if nobody ever got the flu before. Abel was disappointed. She was the type who played tough instead of facing her fear, but he was also relieved. It was nice, talking with her like this, same way everyone was talking about this nasty flu going around. Abel did love big, bad, flashy news. It leveled the playing field, made it easier to have a chat. Bad things were good and unifying, like the way his mom used to talk about the day JFK was shot, how everyone would never forget where they were when they found out, how JFK's death made you feel like the world was a terrible place, but a soft one too, with strangers hugging. Mrs. Blanchard was staring at him with good reason. The hell did JFK have to do with things? He needed to get out more. He did. "Sorry," he said. "So you're okay?" "Honestly, no." Abel leaned in. "Is he here?" "I mean about Rona." "Oh." Women do this. They tell you the truth and lie at the same time. "Look," she said, "she's the nuisance, okay? If she's not claiming that Kip is parking on her lawn, she's yammering about how our dog is eating her carrots." "Do you have a dog?" "No. And she doesn't grow any carrots." They both laughed, and Abel wanted to stay here, live here. She tilted her head. "Are you married?" He wanted to have things in common with Mrs. Blanchard. He wished he too had bruises, a spouse, a baby. "No, ma'am." She pulled back, just enough where he knew that he got that stink on, that loneliness. He was doing it again, building bridges to places that didn't exist, wanting it all too much, too openly. His father always called him a pussy. That might be the reason he became a cop. "Sorry," she said. "It's none of my business. But maybe you could talk to her, ask her to lay off." On she went, patting her baby on the head, painting Rona as the perp, as if the old woman was the one who belted her. She stuffed the pacifier into the baby's mouth, and Abel could see her prick husband stuffing his pecker into her with the same kind of impatient force. The baby was going to suffer if Abel didn't do something. He forced a smile. "You got a cute one there." She laughed, like there was something funny about Abel, and then she was talking again. It was hard to listen, hard to follow. This happened to Abel. His ears filled with cotton, and the words couldn't get into his head. And then he'd start thinking about his father, all the things he used to say about women, how the good Lord put them on this planet to challenge the men, how they're all snakes. God gave them titties and holes to tempt us, Abel. Listen good, he'd say. You can't trust anyone whose hot parts are on the inside, hiding. That's why you treat them like they're just as good as us. And then he'd adjust his tie and sidle up to that pulpit and preach like everything he said in private was a lie. Abel never knew which one was real. "So you know what I mean, right?" she asked. Abel was clueless, but he nodded, which seemed to please her. "Good," she said. "What Rona doesn't understand is that the best part about fighting is making up." He looked at her arms, at her bruises. He was not the best cop, but he was not the worst. "Okay," she said. "Kip, my husband, well, he just lost his brother." "I'm sorry to hear that." "And Kip, he decides his brother died of this superflu going around." "Okay." "He gets all worked up and he takes my keys. He wants me and Randy here at home because he's one of those people. He thinks it's, dangerous out there." Abel didn't like this feeling, the sense that Kip had his upsides. Smart and protective, but then look at her arms. Look at the ring on her finger, the little nipper on her lap. Abel didn't know that he had that in him, the violence, and sometimes it felt like women only wanted men who did, like they couldn't help it. "Anyway," she said, "I'm not the victim. Kip and I run hot, and when you run hot, I only mentioned the thing about my brother-in-law because, to be frank, the making up this time around was loud, even for us." She toyed with her baby's pacifier in a way that cut off Abel's circulation. Why was she being like that? So graphic, blunt. He felt his downsides spread. He was a jealous man, an inexperienced man, rendered cynical by one too many domestic calls, a candy ass once again thinking about his dead preacher father, that motel off I-90 where they went on Abel's 15th birthday, the hooker with big yellow hair and long tits, the smell in room 24, the way she spit in her hands and touched his pecker and laughed with his dad about how he couldn't get it up, the way the sun beat off the back of Abel's head as he stood outside while his dad did what Abel couldn't do, what he didn't want to do, not with that mean yellow-haired hooker. Mrs. Blanchard offered him a slice of hard cake on a chipped plate. "Is this enough?" "That's perfect," he said. She laughed. "It's Entenmann's, officer. Let's not go over the top now." The way she said officer lifted him out of the muck, fueled his upsides. He wasn't a bad-looking guy, wasn't entirely off. He ate his stale cake. If they were married, would it be like this? Could he love that baby? The key right now was to stay calm, to eat the cake slowly and let the sugar hit. Maybe this was the start of something. Abel was pure of heart and body. He didn't have a violent streak or a dead chain-smoking brother, and he'd never forced himself on a woman, never knocked her up just to limit her options. Mrs. Blanchard reached for a button on her sundress. "Do you mind?" And then it was there. Her breast, loaded with milk. Abel felt his body build a bridge to her county, and it was hard not to smile, not to whip it out as she covered herself. There was nothing wrong with his pecker. He was not off, and the quiet in this kitchen was special, theirs. Maybe her prick husband would wreck his car on the way home. Maybe that baby would back off, let Abel have a sip too. "So," she began, "you know that thing I said?" "What thing?" "I changed my mind. You don't need to talk to Rona." "Are you sure? Because I can do that." "Nah," she said. "I'm good. It's good." After Abel dropped off his car at the station, he couldn't go home, not right away. He was too happy. One of the rookies was in the parking lot, crying. Her aunt was dead, and a few of the others were with her, making plans to mourn, to drink. Abel wasn't invited, and for once in his damn life, he didn't care. He got into his car. Vroom. Everything made sense. Of course he would find the love of his life when most people were all doom and gloom. Lately it felt like everyone knew someone who was sick, and Abel was lucky that he didn't love anyone or care about anyone except her. Mrs. Blanchard in her peach dress. He stopped at a bookstore and bought The Bridges of Madison County, He picked up some more of that cake that she fed him, and he left the box open so the cake would dry out. Life was good. He read 2 pages and he had to unzip. He imagined the call on the radio. Domestic disturbance. He imagined himself speeding legally, breaking down her door and killing her husband, right in front of her. He imagined her worse than she'd been today, bloody and beaten. He came harder than he had in years, but after he was done, when he went for the tissues, he avoided his eyes in the mirror. There was something wrong about what just happened. The way he wanted her like that, bloody and beaten, hateful. The next 2 days were empty. No call from nosy neighbor Rona. Too much chaos at work, with everyone keyed up about the superflu in a way that wasn't fun, not anymore. The calls came in, but they were never from Rona, which meant that Mrs. Blanchard was either safe or dead. How those things became one and the same. Safe, dead. And the nights were no good either. His pecker was getting nasty, vile. Sometimes Mrs. Blanchard was tied up, and not in the fun way. Sometimes she was full of bullet holes, and Abel was kissing those holes, sucking the blood out of them, sticking his pecker in those holes. It didn't feel good, knowing there might be an afterlife, knowing his father might be up there eating popcorn, shaking his head at his sick perv son. On the 3rd day, Abel bought 2 boxes of tissues at the market. The broad at the register sighed. "I should stock up," she said. "That superbug, it's something, isn't it?" Abel took the long way home. He drove by the body shop where he saw Kip Blanchard in real life. A monster. Filthy as he seemed in the framed wedding portrait hanging in their foyer, the photograph that Abel had tried to avoid noticing. Smoking and laughing and holding court for the other guys. Mean guys. True grime. Hair growing out of Kip's white t-shirt, grease on his shirt, on his hands. Kip held a cigarette between his lips and mimed taking a woman from behind. Foul. Abel thought of the devil, the white bandana on Kip's head like a satanic mark, a signal. Abel didn't do a drive-by at Mrs. Blanchard's. The street was too small. He tried to be a good boy. He tried one story in his head where Mrs. Blanchard was in her peach dress and her husband was dead on the floor, bloodied, stabbed 50 times, maybe 60. His pecker didn't like that, so back he went the other way. His juices squirting all over her bloodied corpse, bringing her back to life. His pecker in there doing CPR on her heart. On the 5th day, Rona called. Mrs. Blanchard opened the door, jeans and a sad, ratty t-shirt. Probably his. Abel wasn't one of those guys who liked it when women dressed like men, and he was heartened to feel his muscles tense up when he spotted the blood on her forehead. Abel was not a monster. His pecker didn't like that blood either. "Jesus Christ," he said, and Mrs. Blanchard crumpled like a tissue. Abel entered the house. The baby was out of sight. "Before you start, don't. I can't do it, okay? I can't leave him, and it's not his fault. My mother... If I leave him, who's going to pay for her assisted living? And Randy, you know?" Abel knew enough to say nothing, to nod. "Oh, fuck," she said, and she fell into him, through him. Nothing ever felt better than her tears and her trembling shoulders. She was honest now. She said she was a fuck-up. She said she always chose the wrong men. "Not possible," Abel said. "There's no such thing as the right man. They're all evil." The pads of her little fingers went this way and that way. "You're sweet," she said. "It's like you're not... I'm sorry." And nothing had ever felt worse than her regaining her equilibrium, patting his backside, pulling away to pour coffee. She lit a cigarette. She sat in the chair and kicked her feet up on the table. Abel didn't feel like a man, not anymore. He was a cop again, nothing more. "So," she said, "is this what you do all day? You go from one shit marriage to another?" "Sometimes, but I'm not one to judge." She huffed. She was nothing like the Mrs. Blanchard in his fantasies. "Right," she said. "Sure." Would you like to press charges? Yes, she said. You know that cake I made for Rona? She brought it back, left it on our porch, and the raccoons got into it, which pissed off Kip. So I go to Rona and ask her to please not do that kind of thing, and she says she hates devil's food cake. She likes angel food cake. I mean, who in their right mind would take angel food over devil's food? Abel would do that. He preferred angel food. I hear you. I mean, hello, we're talking about chocolate. He wouldn't do it. Wouldn't cackle for her stupid stand-up act or spar with her and admit that he was like Rona in more ways than one. That he too found devil's food to be excessively rich, heavy. He was here to protect, to serve. Would you like to press charges against your husband? She blew smoke at him. Would you? You'd be surprised at how many systems are in place to help women in this situation. Right, she said. Well, in the meantime, I have to go help my sister. She's sick. Can you and Randy stay with her for a while? She looked at him like he shouldn't know her baby's name. Wow. I'm good with names. I'm terrible, she said, and she was back. Lovely and scared and soft. But I guess that's no surprise. Do you want to know something sick? Her feet were on the ground now. He was quiet, ghost in the graveyard level still. When he came after me today, after the whole cake fiasco, I ran into the bedroom. I wanted Rona to hear, so I made a dig about his dead brother. I wanted him to belt me because then you'd come back and... I'm repulsive. I'm a mother, and I'm poking the bear trying to get myself killed so this cop I met once will come back and rescue me. Abel's insides were melting and hard. Maybe he will, he said. She lit another cigarette. Right. And then we'll run away and live happily ever after and make a big happy family. Nope. I'm a fuck-up officer. I'm a real, true, fuckity-fucking fuck-up. You're an angel, Emily. Abel did it. He said her name. She was quiet now, too quiet. Did he overstep? Did she realize that he'd done a little recon at the station? She gulped a little, and maybe this was good. Maybe she wanted him to say it again. Emily. But then she chuckled. Oh, I'm not an angel, officer. That's your department. Abel's warm insides turned cold. He didn't know the first thing about women, and he scratched the back of his head like he hadn't been murmuring her name in the shower, practicing. Oh, I'm no angel either, Mrs. B. Far from it, in fact. It was terrible the way she laughed, like she saw right through him and his Mrs. B nonsense. What if she loved the devil too much to love him? So, she said, what about you? Girlfriend, crazy ex? Or maybe you're the crazy ex? No, he said. Not at the moment. He always added that second part to sound like a more complete person. She said. The night me and Kip met, I'm sitting at this bar and I'm 6,000 sheets to the wind. He didn't like this, any of it, and he chuckled. I've been there. It was a lie and she knew it. Anyway, she said. Kip swaggers up like, where's your boyfriend? I'm feeling myself, so I go off on him, right? I tell him I hate when guys ask if you have a boyfriend, as if I need an excuse in the form of a man. If I don't like a guy, I don't like him. I shouldn't have to invent a boyfriend. Sometimes I think if I wasn't so drunk, so flippant. I don't know where I was going with this, but it's that thing where someone meets you and that first impression sticks. I can't blame Kip for thinking that drunk me was the true me. And maybe it is, you know. Abel didn't like her talking about her husband as if he wasn't a man too, and the way she covered her mouth to emit a tiny burp, the way she shifted, she knew she was making him uncomfortable. He could feel her trying to change. He could see it. This was love. It had to be. Anyway, she said, what's your story? Seriously. He didn't know how to tell her there was no one else, so he borrowed from Bridges and said he wasn't so lucky, that he'd only been in love once, that it wasn't in the cards. It was terrifying, waiting for her to respond, the way she was looking at him like she couldn't decide what to do with him, like he was a sundress she might just return for a refund. He was flailing. She wanted to know him, but he couldn't tell her about his pecker, about the way his heart raced every time he thought she might be bleeding, wounded. He couldn't tell her about the boxes of Kleenex he'd torn through in her honor, the way he'd entered her in his mind, imagined his pecker soaked in her blood. "You're sweet," she said. "I guess there has to be one good one in the world." She laughed, and he laughed, and this was the Bridges of Madison County. It had to be. And then she looked down at her dirty fingers in this way where he felt invited to join her. So he did. And they sat there like that for a minute or two, both of them staring at her hands. "Well," she said, "I hope I never see you again." Something changed. It was her, Emily. She was watching him, waiting. It was scary to be so close. What if he was wrong? The same old Abel drowning in delusions? Didn't matter. He had to do it. He had to jump. And thank God he went through with it, because the malarkey was all true, wasn't it? Love was powerful. You really could say a lot without opening your mouth. He smiled. She smiled. Abel was inside of something as real and private as this little kitchen table. The first flush, like that tickle in your throat that hints at things to come. Her eyes told him what she wanted. "Abel," he said. "It's Abel." There was radio silence for 2 days. But that's how it goes in love stories, in sex. In, out, in, out. People were dying. It was like JFK being assassinated all day, every day, and in crazy times, people do crazy things. They were both making their plans, probably. Abel dug up his father's pistol. No one knew about it, only him. He drove to the market for tissues, but there was a big sign out front. No tissues, no toilet paper, move on. At home, he mopped up with a washcloth, and he could feel it in his bones, in his eyeballs. Tomorrow was it. Tomorrow, Rona would call. But then tomorrow came, and he was wrong. Stupid and sick. Sick to want the call from Rona. His pecker was achy. He needed to get nicer washcloths, and he couldn't go on like this, waiting. She couldn't either. What if she was dead? What if she thought he didn't love her? He flipped it around like one of the detectives. She'd opened up to him. She told him the husband beat her. She told him she wanted out, but she couldn't get out. And what did Abel do? Nothing. It was a tragedy, really. Kip Blanchard got himself killed. The poor bastard was in the Safeway parking lot, and the Colder guys on the job were right. What kind of an idiot brings a gun to a knife fight and loses? Kip Blanchard, apparently. 3 days after the funeral, Abel put 2 suitcases in the trunk of his car, one for him, one for her, for Emily. He stashed Kip's handkerchief in his back pocket, not in a serial killer with a trophy kind of way, more like a cat who kills the mouse for its humans. And he wasn't dumb. He wasn't going to show it to Emily. He also didn't expect things would get physical right away. It was just there to remind him of what he did, what he was. A man. He picked up fresh flowers and he drove slowly. There was no rush, not today. When you find the one, you want to savor every step of the beautiful ladder, each one a bridge leading to someplace better, higher, closer. He popped a breath mint after he parked in front of her house. It was quiet here, which said a lot about Emily's life, about her friends. A dead husband and no one's here to help. "Excuse me, officer!" It was her. Rona. And it was him. Stupid. She froze up on her front lawn. He looked down at the bandana in his hand. White and blood-soaked. Off. Abel was not a man, not fully. He was a boy, clinging to an unlucky rabbit's foot, and Rona was backing up, looking this way and that way, a bird going cuckoo. He slipped the handkerchief in his back pocket. Abel needed a minute. Rona was old, elderly kind of old, and Emily was right. She was paranoid, sickly. While the house looked pert and quaint on the outside, it was a different story inside. Sticky notes everywhere, pink and green and blue. Tape murder, she wrote. Milk, Kool-Aid. It broke Abel's heart to think of a woman living like this. Shit-stained granny panties and no grandchildren. He'd been smart about things, taming her the way you do a snake, holding her tight, telling her it was okay, leading her to the bathroom and helping her out of her clothes, running the water like a home health aide, making sure it wasn't too hot or too cold. Eventually, Rona submitted, as if she wanted this Samaritan to send her to a better place, protect and serve. Or maybe she just passed out from the stress. In any case, she died before he could kill her, and if the cops did investigate, they wouldn't. They'd conclude that a shut-in died in her own tub. People don't like that kind of thing. They don't like it when lonely old people die alone. Abel drank the last of Rona's tea. It was safer this way, taking a piece of her that he couldn't carry around in his back pocket. The bandana. Stupid, yes. But stupid only matters if you refuse to get smart. He was kind, a chip off the old block, visiting Rona one last time, kneeling by her side. He was starting to see that his father was wrong about a lot, but right, too. Turned out Abel really was off. Anyone who kills two people and keeps his tea down is missing a piece or two. A heart, a conscience. Abel heard a siren and remembered the virus. Maybe the bad in him was in him all along. His mother used to paint her eyelids blue to bring out the blue in her God-given eyes. Maybe the virus was like the eyelid paint, drawing the truth out of Abel. It was good to sit here, though. Proof that his goodness was also true, same as the bad. The dead don't die all at once. A soul goes slowly, in stages. Steeping tea. And Abel was really doing it, wasn't he? Getting away with 2 murders. Okay, 1.5, but still. It was something. Room 24 hadn't changed much over the past 20 years. Not that Abel told Emily. She looked around. She sniffed. "It's bleach," she said. "I hate bleach." "At least it's clean," he said, like a husband. "Not yet. Soon, though." Things hadn't gone exactly as planned. When he rang Emily's bell, she slammed the door on him. She said she was fine. She was mourning, and she said Abel had no idea what that was like because he wasn't married. He didn't know that love and hate are in lockstep, that passion is ugly, that she didn't want the father of her child to die, that it wasn't even about Randy, that love was love. It hurt, the way she didn't invite him in, the way she said he had no business being here, as if he was in uniform, as if he wasn't hers. Eventually, she opened the door. "Okay," she'd said. "Okay." Abel went into the house. Again, not the stuff of dreams. Papers everywhere. She was in those jeans and a sweater that belonged to him. Kip. She was frustrated with liens and mortgages. All of it was so ugly. More proof that what Abel had done was noble. Kip had been a secretive prick, and the house was underwater. Her life was underwater. Abel sat at the table. "Any leads?" "Any what?" "Leads," he said. "I don't know. I have to focus on this so I can get to my sister's kids." "All right." Abel was still getting used to this whole relationship thing where a person comes into your life with all these other people. Emily had a sister, a dead sister as of 3 days ago. He tried to say the right things. "I'm sorry. We're going to be okay." And he did his best to hide the bad stuff, like the fact that he was a bit happy about the situation. Emily was taking in the kids, so they were going to be a big family. It was a relief, the shameful kind you had to keep to yourself, but Abel felt safe knowing that Emily would need him even more now. And then it was bad clockwork. His thoughts drifted back to the bandana. to the blood. "Did you know about the gun?" he'd said. She looked at him like he was bad. Off. "The report," Abel said. "Your husband had a gun on him, no?" "Well, of course I knew about the gun." She was lying again. "Oh." "Look," she said, "I don't know what you're doing here, okay? I told you, I'm a fuck-up, but I'm not an idiot. Do you want to know the truth? Do you want to know how I am, how we were? I loved that gun, okay? Kip fucked me with that gun, and sometimes he put it in my mouth while we were fucking. The night he died, before he went to the store, he said he would kill me and the baby and himself with that gun if this fucking superflu ever came for us. And it turned me on so much to think of him killing us in one fell swoop that before he went to the store, I fucked him again." "Abel." Now was now. Room 24. Emily held a pillow and scowled. "Smell this." Abel loved that he still loved her despite her being a filthy whore, a disgusting liar, the kind of illogical woman who doesn't fear a deadly flu but questions a hotel pillow. Some lies were good. All her dirty talk was bogus. Kip didn't have a gun. That gun belonged to Abel's father, and then to Abel, not to Kip, never. And Abel was more than happy to play along. He lifted the pillow to his face, half expected her to come at him, smother him. No dice, as he declared the pillow fresh as a daisy, and then jumped on the bed and smiled at her. One of these days she would be her old self. She would smile back at him. She glared at his torso, at his feet. Was he ugly? Fat? "Sorry," he said. "I'll take my shoes off." "We can't sleep in the same bed." Where did it go? The love. It wasn't gone. It was just hiding. Afraid of good things like Abel's angelic ways, his gentle hands, his good boy pecker. "Look," she said, "I told you, I need a minute." This again. The way she liked to list all the bad things. Losing her house, her husband, her sister. He obliged and moved to the other bed, fighting the big new fear. What if her love wasn't hiding? What if it was gone, and he was only in this room because Emily was afraid to drive to Boise on her own? Afraid, and maybe lazy. But then she pulled out her sundress, the one from the day they met. Abel smiled. He liked their little world, the portable crib that he assembled, little Randy gurgling. They had everything they needed, and that sundress was an omen in the good way. "You take all the time in the world, Emily. Can we be quiet? Randy needs to sleep, and my head is spinning, and I don't want to take it out on you, but—" He zipped his lip with his finger. She didn't get a kick out of him, and he didn't appreciate her foul language or the way she picked her fingernails. "I'm going out for a smoke," she said. He'd get her to quit when they were settled in Boise. "Take your time." The baby was snoozing, so Abel followed her. There were bad people in the world. There was a killer flu. And he watched her enter a phone booth. Time stopped when she dropped in a quarter. Was there another man? Another cop? Another Kip? "Joni," she said, and he felt his stomach drop. Most of it was small talk, and then she sighed. "So, the cop and I know, but beggars can't be choosers. I might just be allergic to decency, or maybe it's impossible to imagine anything good beginning at this point in my life." Abel went back to the room. Those words didn't matter because they weren't meant for him. Women do that for their friends. They lie and downplay what's good. Joan was divorced and Emily was sweet. She didn't want Joan to feel bad about being alone. Night had fallen, and it was time to eat. Nothing was easy, not anymore. They couldn't take the baby into the poisonous world, but they couldn't leave the baby alone. Abel offered to go on his own, but Emily was aghast. "Why, so you can bring all the germs back with cold fries?" Beyond that, she was tired of room 24. She needed to get out. Abel fell in line and helped get the baby in the car seat. He suggested they hit a drive-thru, but Emily shook him off. She needed to be in a booth with people. He treaded lightly, made a casual remark about germs, and again Emily snapped. "Stop questioning my every move." Eventually he spotted a diner, and again Emily scoffed. "I too know how to read." He used the directional as he turned into the parking lot, and Emily huffed. "We're the only ones on the road. You're such a Ronald Rule follower." Abel said he was sorry, and she said to stop being so... Never mind. When they walked into the diner, her face fell. There was only one other party, an older couple. Abel requested a booth, and Emily and the hostess laughed at him, but that didn't hurt as much. He was a little silly when you considered all the open seats. Dinner came and went. Meatloaf for him, a cheeseburger for her, and a bottle for baby Randy. Abel couldn't let their big night out end like this. He had to do better, make her smile. He caught her eye as he ordered his dessert. "A slice of angel food cake, if you please." It was supposed to be sweet, a private sundress kind of moment, but again, Emily balked. "If you're going to make us sit here, you should at least get something substantial." Abel hung his head. He felt it coming. He wanted to hold it in, but for the first time in their life together, he lost his cool and snapped. "At least I'm not a monster." The look on her face, her eyes bulging. Abel spit out an apology, but Emily raised her hands in the air like she was in church. "Finally," she said, "a little truth." She clapped her hands like this was progress, like she wanted him to be vicious. Abel looked at baby Randy, sleeping and innocent, pure. Okay, yes, Abel did bad things, but Emily didn't know about all that. He didn't want to be vicious. He wasn't vicious. When she went to the bathroom, he changed his order. And when she returned and saw the devil's food cake, she frowned. "Are you really that much of a doormat?" It was time for bed. Sure, they were in separate beds, but there was hope. Come the wee hours, Emily might have a nightmare and wake up scared and go to him. She turned on the TV. He looked at her. "Really?" "I need the white noise." "All night?" "You will too," she said. "I snore like a freight train. It drove Kip nuts." She flipped past all the nice old movies. Emily wanted the news, and Abel had had enough of the doom and gloom. She didn't love the silence they made together, not the way he did. And when they were settled in their separate beds, he turned out the lights. "Sweet dreams, my love." "Fat chance," she said. "Between the stench of bleach and this mattress, I'm pretty sure you'd call this a cot." This was not pillow talk, but it was early. She'd been through things. She might never be sweet with him. Her former marriage might have killed something inside of her, same way he was when they met, rendered cynical by all those domestic calls. Life wore you down, no matter what you did, and soon she was out cold. She wasn't a liar. Her snore was something out of a dragon. Abel couldn't sleep, not with Emily's gargling and the shiny news people on the TV barely able to contain their excitement over the thing, the virus, Captain something or other. He longed to be with Emily, to open up to her the way she had with him so many times. And he wanted to know things about her. Did she believe in God, in good and evil? Sometime after 3, he smelled something funny. He went to check on Randy. So, this is what a dead baby looks like. A first for Abel, and he allowed himself a few tears. How did he miss it? He should have known something was wrong in the diner when Randy fell asleep, when he didn't wake up in the car, even after napping most of the day. And his drooling, he'd been drooling more, hadn't he? His little body was fighting. And what did Abel do to chip in, to save him? Nothing. This is the worst it gets. A life that doesn't get to be lived. He covered the almost boy's tiny body, and he climbed into Emily's bed. Her body was hot, her skin slimy with sweat. She shuddered. She was alive. "I killed Kip," he said. "I killed Rona, too. sort of. He could feel the wheels turning inside her head, but he couldn't see where they were going, so he went again. "Emily," he said, "the pistol was my dad's. It was never inside of you." She was shivering. And was it the virus? Was it love? Hate? He opened his mouth to hers. He felt her hand find his pecker. Second time that happened in this room. She was delirious, murmuring, "Kip, Kippy." She pulled Abel closer, and then closer, and then that word again. "Kip." Abel looked the other way. She'd said it herself. "I'm terrible with names." This was it. The beginning and the end, and this was beautiful. The three of them together. He wanted her to pass while he was inside of her, to die without knowing about her baby. He kissed her, to be sure he would catch it. He willed her toxic breath to penetrate his airways, shut down his lungs, and prove that, despite what she said to Joni, she was not a beggar. She was a chooser. She chose him. "Abel," he said. "It's Abel." Her body rattled as if she would go anywhere with him, be it Boise or heaven or hell. In the morning, Abel smacked his lips. So that was love. Sex. Abel had just lost his virginity in the same place where he'd kept it all those years ago. He rolled over and the breath got trapped in his chest, his heart. There she wasn't. Emily. Her body was cold, and he was stranded. Alive. She ran off to heaven or hell or Boise to be with Kip and Rona and Randy, and he wasn't even feverish. The flu didn't want him. Emily didn't want him. No one wanted him. He leapt out of the deathbed and dug his gun out of his duffel bag. He was dizzy and fuzzy. Off. But there was more to it. The room was off, the light. He had to focus, choose. He could pull the trigger and chase Emily down in heaven or hell or Boise. She was weak. She was always going to stumble, but he could bring her back, knock them out all over again, Kip and Rona, Randy. And then what? Would they go on like this forever? Would she do it again, sneak out while he was sleeping and run back to the bastard who nearly put her in her grave? Something tingled in him. He remembered about souls, about purgatory. He didn't see the light so much as he felt it. As it turned out, Abel was dead, gone. This was a challenge, the kind of thing his dad talked about. If Abel wanted to be with Emily, he had to pull the trigger, do to himself what he'd done to the others. God was testing him, and Abel would rise to the occasion, same way he did last night. He brought the pistol to his lips. He imagined it in Emily's mouth. Did she really want that kind of action? He closed his eyes and, "Housekeeping!" A voice. Impatience and disgust. Abel dropped his pistol on his foot. The pain was real. Physical and earthly. He was alive. He had feet, toes, a pecker. "Housekeeping!" The woman on the other side of the wall pounded on the door with knuckles that made the room rattle. She was life, loud and demanding. Her fist lifted bleach off the tiles and dragged the must from the pillows, from the bodies, the dead bodies. Abel slapped his face the way you slap a baby's bottom. "Coming!" He slid the gun in a drawer. He didn't want to upset the housekeeper. And he couldn't blame Emily for leaving him. She was honest. She preferred devil's food cake anyway. Maybe that's why he was immune to this thing. Maybe he was an angel. Or maybe it wasn't about good and evil. Maybe it was just something in the sweet, lame cake he preferred. He was on his feet now, smoothing his hair, looking into his eyes in the mirror, a task that was usually so painful, so scary. Love was transformative, it was true. Maybe the housekeeper was like him. Maybe she knew the bridges of Madison County. Already she had one thing going for her.